Yeah. Well, anyway, it's a wonderful, wonderful book. So we're very pleased to have you. So thank you. And go ahead, and Suzanne, if you have some questions here.
Yeah. This book was so much fun and mortifying at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah, it was so funny going back to that time, like, as a middle schooler where, like, everything was so embarrassing and, like, you had to, like, do this, like, the way that she does this whole roundabout thing to, like, get around it when she could have just said one little thing to somebody and it would have been fine. And I totally can relate to that.
Yes.
So was that kind of drawn from, not to get into embarrassing stuff, obviously, but that kind of drawn from experience? Just
Yeah,
like,
I think, like, always going around the solution, it's, like, funnier to, like, do something different, and, like, they have, like, a little buddy comedy adventure rather than, like, tell anybody what's going on. So I feel like the situation is not something that personally happened to me, but the emotions of, like, having a very awkward time and feeling like everything is much bigger than it actually is, and every emotion is heightened, is definitely, like, from personal experience, yeah.
And you obviously can't tell your parents because they'll embarrass you.
It's so embarrassing.
I have a 13-year-old and I embarrass him every day.
Yes, yeah.
Mostly on purpose, but
Good, yeah.
Also the Mexican food scene was both of our favorites.
I know,
that was pretty brilliant.
yeah. There's like a scene in a Mexican restaurant and they like hilarity ensues, yeah, so.
That was a brilliant solution. I was like,
Yes, it was like inspired by my family going to like Rudy's restaurant, like Rudy's Mexican restaurant. That never happened to me specifically what happened in the book, but that was like how I pictured the Mexican restaurant as like little Rudy's on Carrial.
Nice. Then I like the dichotomy too of like, this is like the end of the world, and then she finds out the other big secret at the end that's actually kind of the end of the world, and like puts it into perspective. I thought that was great.
Yeah, it was nice. I felt like I had like an emotional arc and then like her actual adventure arc, which felt like more important until the very end, but her like emotions came through. Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting too the way like nobody thinks they're the kind of selfish character, and then you look back and you're like, oh, I'm that person. Like,
right.
That was really good.
Yeah. Especially I think in like middle grade, like she's quite self-absorbed and very funny. Yeah. And I feel like again with every emotion being heightened, it's all about like, oh, everyone's watching me and everything. Like people care what I'm wearing, so I feel like it's not until the end that she's like, no, nobody cares, and there's bigger things going on.
Exactly. Yeah. When I saw a meme about like somebody snuck their like 9-foot-long python into their shopping bag, and like nobody on the bus noticed. So like if they don't notice that, like they're not gonna.
Yeah, they don't care. Yeah.
That's a great lesson I think for kids that age to learn.
Thank you. Yeah. Sweet.
Were any of the characters based on anybody that you knew?
No, I think like I have like friends from my childhood here. I feel like everyone was pulled from my like experiences, but not specifically one character that was one person. Yeah.
And we were talking earlier off camera about how the book came about. So if you could talk a little bit about how it came about and the process of writing the book.
Yeah, so I really liked Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. When I was growing up, and it felt like it talked a lot about puberty and like changing friendships, and I knew that I wanted to write in like the middle grade space. I didn't want to write like for teens. That like the YA voice isn't really something that resonated with me. So when I was writing for kids, this book kind of stuck out to me as like both a coming of age and talking about puberty, which is not something that I really saw in fiction at the time. And then the actual writing process, as I started it before the pandemic, I got my agent before the pandemic, and then we went on sub to editors on the first day of March 17th, 2020, when I was sent home for work. So that was like a very crazy time, and feeling like I wasn't sure if it was going to get picked up because all the editors went home. And then obviously it did get bought, and then it has taken 2 years to do all of the like edits and making the cover and pushing it out. Yeah.
How did you find your agent?
How did I find my agent?
Yeah.
Just cold querying. Yeah, I just looked up like different agents that represented children's books, and then like looked at her sales and anything that she had been doing in the middle grade space, along with like what her tastes were, if they were like more funny or more serious and more literary. And so then I sent her a query, and then she requested the full, and then I took I think the whole process took about like 3-4 months between sending my first query and then signing with my agent.
Wow.
And then like I revised with her for about 6 months before we went on submission to editors.
Going before that, did you always want to, how old were you when you thought you'd want to become a writer?
I think I always wanted to be like a storyteller, but I wasn't specifically like wanting to be an author, and I still work in entertainment, so it's still kind of like my day-to-day life. But I thought that I wanted to be a screenwriter until recently, where I felt like the fiction middle grade voice felt better and more natural to write in, because I feel like her entire like internal monologue and the way she speaks is just how I spoke when I was 11 to myself. So yeah, it just felt more easy to slip into than like a script format.
This definitely resonates more, like for anybody who's been through that whole
Yeah.
and it's such a humorous
I've heard that like
it's all the
people
different-
have like a really mortifying experience reading it, and like they say it's very cringeworthy, which I'm not sure if like is a great thing, but they say it's like it brings back such cringe.
Exactly, it's I find things like that, like if I identify with them that much, because junior high school,
Yeah.
that's like, oh, that's really good writing.
Yeah.
Takes me right back.
Thank you. Yeah.
No, it was great. It was hilarious. Oh, do you know?
Does anybody have any questions?
He'd asked you if it was modeled on any real life experiences or people you know. And I'm just wondering, when you wrote the characters, did you kind of have in mind before you wrote them what their personalities would be like, or did they reveal themselves as you wrote?
I think I knew the main character just because like a lot of the stuff was based on me, but then a lot of the characters changed in the revisions, and then their more personalities came out. But I think like the biggest personalities are TAHLIA, her best friend, and then those are the two characters that we followed the most, or like they have the most prominent personalities. Thank you.
I have one more question. Are you allowed to talk about any future books that you might have coming out?
Yes, I have a book coming out next year, and then I have a book coming out in 2025, and one coming out in 2026.
Oh, wow.
Woo! Wow.
I got a question. What advice would you have for someone who dreams of being a writer but is maybe frightened to start?
I feel like a lot of people want to become writers but then don't sit down and do it. I feel like the actual act of just putting pen to paper or like fingers to keys is a lot less daunting when you start getting in the habit of doing it, even if it's not anything good that you're producing. And then I think once you get in the habit of actually creating, then it becomes easier it's much easier to revise something that you already have than to look at a blank paper and come up with like an entire concept. Yeah.
Will you carry on this character in future books, or was this a
No,
one?
it's just a one and done. Yeah, so like the book that comes out next year is in the same genre, for the like same age group and same. It takes place in like 24 hours, which this one does as well. So it's quite like quick paced, but it's with two different characters, and it's about like a grandma and a daughter that go around Hollywood for the night and like have a really nice adventure together.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Along that lines, what's the appeal to you to write within a tight period, like a 24-hour period, as opposed to writing a longer story over a couple months or even years?
Yeah, so I actually didn't, it's not something that like I chose and didn't appeal to me. I just wrote this one that was in 24 hours.
Yeah.
And so it became really like quick paced, and they moved very quickly from location to location. And then my agent and my editor wanted to create like a brand of that in quick pace. So then the next parameter for my book was that it would also be 24 hours. So the next 3 that I have coming out are all within at least like one weekend to kind of have that same voice. So I
That's
guess,
something to play with, that would make it different.
yeah. So I guess it's not something that I chose. It was just when I was on submission for the next one, like my option book, which just went to my same editor.
Yeah.
They put that parameter on it. That was something that they were looking for.
Interesting. So what if they came up to you and said, "Can you write the screenplay?"
She's from
Although I don't know if I would be able to write the screenplay of this, just because it feels like it's not. I don't know if it's. Yeah, I think someone else would probably have a better take on it than I can do.
You wouldn't have a problem giving it up then.
No, I'm like finished with this book. I've moved on from it so much that
Okay.
it's like almost strange, because now it came out in April, but I've turned in my other books last year, so I feel like I've moved on to other stories, so it's not something that I feel very precious about or anything like that.
What would you say to parents who have boy-identified children about if you like think, well, I want to get that book, and then they say, well, it's only for people who consider themselves girls having periods, what would you say?
I mean, it's about a coming of age story, and it's something that everyone should learn about. Also, I feel like there is pretty inclusive language. Like, something I didn't want to put in there is like feminine product, because I don't want like menstruation to be feminine. Like, I'm not sure that there's a lot of people that are women that necessarily like think that they're feminine. So I think that it's like an inclusive language, and anyone can relate to it. But obviously, like, periods are women identified, so that's something that like obviously will more relate to girls, but you know, if someone is more interested in that, and puberty in general.
So you would emphasize it more as boys just learning about coming of age, or more like
Yeah.
boys trying to understand better, or both?
Both.
I think
pretty
boys that
cool.
age could stand to learn a little bit more.
Yeah.
If that's embarrassing for them, and I think that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, you can see how boys' brothers might want to understand what's happening to my
Yeah,
sister. Why is she so
yeah.
weird?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I
Maybe
think
they
it'd
would
be,
make
like,
fun of her.
giggling. Yeah, I feel like if I was a boy reading it, I feel like it would be like a lot of giggling to get through. Like reading the word tampon would probably be quite difficult.
That's what you did, right, Mike?
Yeah,
You just giggled
that's
the
why
whole
he was laughing in, in the coffee shop. Yeah.
Next question.
Yeah.
We'll X that one out. Are there any other questions? Well, Karina will be here to sign some more books, so please purchase it up at the register. And thank you all for coming. And Karina, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.